You're live, Bill.
Hello and welcome to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. I am your host, filling in for Leon Wolf, who is out with a case of the measles herpes. Bill McMorris from the Washington Free Beacon. I am joined by my esteemed panel of guests, Jeff Blehar from the Ace of Spades Decision Desk, and Neal Doing, fresh from making the gritty remake of The Outsiders. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. We also have with us Brent Cochran from the Drift Compatible podcast and Mo Lane of RedState. Thank you so much to Joe Cunningham, also of RedState, for producing. And let's get right back into it. This has been the worst week ever. Mo, explain to us why.
Well, I'll start off with I don't think it's the worst week ever. The worst week ever was the day that we had sat around and we realized that, well, episode 1 sucked. That was the worst week ever. That was the week we realized that everything was meaningless and that the universe existed merely to drink our pain. What we have had here this week has just been politics. Welcome back to the 1820s, folks, and the 1800s, and the 1850s, and the 1870s, and in every era, and pretty much American politics before the commies showed up, and we had to take everything seriously for a change. Basically, what's happening here is we have a lot of people yelling at each other, and we call that democracy. Sorry, I can't be doom and gloom. I got Lego Dimensions in the back on the Xbox 360. It's not a bad week.
No, fair enough. Agree to disagree. Brent, where are you?
I don't think it's the worst week ever. Episode 1 sucking's pretty high up there.
Thank you.
But it's high up there. It's I don't know if it's the worst week ever. This week's been pretty bad though. I mean, every poll says he who shall not be named is expanding his lead.
Donald Trump. Do not give him power by pretending that we don't know his name.
Wait, I thought you were talking about Bernie Sanders. I mean, Brent, go on.
That's part 2. We've gotten word that the likely next president of the United States, Hillary Clinton, is passing our secrets out like candy favors on her bathroom server. It's just, we had an entire Twitter war about the proper way to cite the Bible, whether it's 2 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians. It's gotten to the absurd point already, and it's freaking January.
And the thing is, any Christian knows, Brent, that it's I Corinthians. That's how you say it.
Exactly. No, it's not the worst week ever, but it certainly ranks up there in craptastic weeks.
Fair enough. Now, Joy, you put yourself out there as an expert in polls. Tell us, is there anything going on to this CNN poll showing Bernie Sanders just opening up ridiculous, 30-point leads in New Hampshire and an 8-point lead in Iowa? Is this this definitely looks like an outlier around polls. Have you had a chance to look at it yet?
I want to start with the stipulation that we always have to start with, which is that LOL, nothing matters. Okay, so it's not worth getting too upset about any of this because at the end of the day, nothing matters. I am incredibly skeptical of those CNN polls. I think they're garbage. I think that their likely voter screens are shit. Pardon my language. I also think that the participation rates that they're projecting for the Iowa caucuses are ridiculous. All right, there is no damn way on the face of this earth that 47% of eligible voters in some of these states is the participation rates they're getting. It's impossible. Okay, 7% of Iowa voters participated in the caucuses in 2012. Barack Obama expanded the electorate in 2008. Perhaps Trump might expand the electorate on the GOP side. That's a real possibility. But I see no reason to think, despite the fact that there is some sort of interesting ideological tension between Bernie and Hillary on the Democratic side, why participation is going to grow that much. So I don't believe anything until Ann Selzer releases a poll. I think that it's a jump ball in Iowa for Hillary versus Bernie. I think Bernie is well ahead in New Hampshire. I think that's easy. I also think it doesn't matter because until such time as Bernie Sanders manages to get black people to like him, which he hasn't yet, Hillary Clinton is destined to be the nominee because these are the whitest states, some of the whitest electorates in the entire Democratic primary. when they go south to South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, all those SEC states, Hillary's going to mop the floor with old, cranky New York Jewish Vermonter Bernie Sanders, unless something changes really radically between now and then.
I want to jump in on this with two thoughts. First, on the Trump situation. Basically, and I was saying this earlier, the way it looks into Iowa, one of two things is going to happen. Either Trump is going to come in first place in Iowa, or he's going to come in fourth place. And let me explain why. Basically, the big question, the big burning question that everyone agrees on is, has the fundamentals of the race changed in Iowa? Iowa is a very difficult state to poll effectively, and it is a very difficult state to assess effectively because of the unique system of the way they choose their voters. Oh, sorry, they choose their delegates. Now, Trump's argument is that he can change this, that he doesn't need an excellent organization, and he has a horrible organization in Iowa. He has an organization that allows 9/11 truthers working for him to talk to the New York Times, which is the definition of a bad organization. Donald Trump's argument is that doesn't matter, he's going to win anyway. Everyone else's argument is it matters a lot, and organization and ground game is very important. If Trump is correct, and he very may well be correct, he will win Iowa. If he is not correct, if organization matters in Iowa, then he's going to come in third or fourth place, possibly fourth. I have some people arguing that it would be third. Some people say that he can still eke out a good second, but still, it's going to be one or the other, feast or famine. As for Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton was inevitable until she was not. Now, we also should remember that Hillary Clinton also technically won the 2008 primaries. She will not win it the same way this time around because they changed the rules around a bit. But back then, she won all the big states. She won all the states that you would expect a Democrat to win. New York, New Jersey, California, Texas, technically, although they've got this incredibly strange multi-caucus primary system thing there. Barack Obama won first by running up the numbers in the smaller states, which Bernie Sanders could also do, and also then convincing people that he was a better choice to be president. And when I say people, I mean Democratic superdelegates, than Hillary Clinton was. Now, can Bernie Sanders do this now? I don't know. He's this weird guy who yells at clouds. But he's still a better candidate than Hillary Clinton is. And Hillary Clinton is a horrible candidate. Also, Bernie Sanders is also a horrible candidate because he's a commie.
Well, thank you very much, Mo. It's always good to hear from a guy who has a cat wandering in the background of his political manifesto. Brent, weigh in on New Hampshire for us. What are we seeing out there?
I was on the phone today with Brandon Finnegan, who is kind of the brains and the genius behind the decisions desk, the Ace of Spades decision desk. And I called him. I said, I have an actual question. What the hell is going on in New Hampshire? With Kasich, polling in second, with Sanders opening up some 30-point lead over Hillary, what in the hell is happening? There has to be an explanation for this. He goes, I want you to quote me on this. Ignore all the New Hampshire polls. They're complete crap. He goes, not one of those polls matters until they have the results in Iowa.
Yes!
He said, once the results come in Iowa, once we see what the caucus does, then New Hampshire will decide which way they're going to go. He said, what's going to happen is either Trump wins in Iowa, and it kind of cements this idea of he's ahead in the polls and he's the powerhouse and New Hampshire will break towards him, or he loses, Cruz wins in Iowa, and all hell breaks loose in New Hampshire, and it's a free-for-all from there on out. But he thinks that if Trump wins Iowa, he takes New Hampshire, and he's going to cruise the rest of the way. But his bottom line was, ignore everything you're hearing from New Hampshire. None of the polls matter until we get samples that include the Iowa caucus results.
Understood. Now, Neal, there is a certain segment of panic-driven right-wing Twitter out there that is basically coming to terms with the fact that Donald Trump could be the nominee and openly speculating that Trump will steamroll and win Iowa, South Carolina, and New Hampshire. And if he does that, if he wins those three states, somehow he locks up the nomination. Are you this special kind of pessimist, or do you disagree with that thinking?
I think right now we're in a situation where we have to wait for the voters to weigh in, and the caucusers we can prognosticate and predict and say what we think all the livelong day, and everyone does incessantly. But it's going to come down to who shows up, and if Trump performs very well in Iowa, which he is predicted to do, that will certainly give him some momentum. If he does well in New Hampshire, takes first place, second place, that will again, line up with people's pessimism. And then if he does well in South Carolina, that's when I think I would really start to get worried. That's, 3 is a trend, I think they say. But even so, these early states, they aren't the end-all, be-all, and there's still a lot of delegates out there to get, and a lot of time for Donald Trump to say something terrible and for his supporters to actually prove themselves to be decent human beings instead of easily led populist scum. So, am I panicking? No, I've resigned myself to the fates. Whatever happens, happens. Right now, I think the only thing for us to do is to keep our dignity as a party and as a conservative movement, and to not get swept up in either the panic or in an opportunistic accommodation with these rabble who are attempting to burn down all the institutions that would affect conservative change in this country.
Now, reports came out today saying that a group of leading intellectual conservatives was going to publish, a manifesto, an anti-Trump manifesto. And, we're starting to get these names, Eric Erickson, Brent Bozell, Glenn Beck, Rich Lowry, which I don't really see as intellectuals so much as popular, all of those names. But, Joe, let me ask you this. When you see the headline, conservative intellectuals against Trump, pen open letter against Trump, are they trying to get this man elected? Isn't that the entire point of his appeal is, screw the elites?
Yes, and I think that we are doing a wonderful job, just all around. I think as a party, we really need to give ourselves a big round of applause for being so great at saying and doing things that cause the exact opposite of what we want to happen. We wanted Donald Trump to flame out, and so we gave Donald Trump literally all of the airtime he could possibly have to say ridiculous Donald Trumpian things. And we wanted Marco Rubio to be the guy that would be up against Ted Cruz. And so the establishment went behind Ted Cruz and publicly let it out there that they wanted Ted Cruz to be their guy, Marco Rubio to be their guy. And everybody realized, and Marco Rubio starts tanking. And so the two guys the establishment doesn't want, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, are now going to be at the top. And as if things could not be worse for the establishment, they are now going to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is talking about it, meaning Ted Cruz is going to get it. And the establishment is shooting themselves in the goddamn face repeatedly, and they don't know it yet. That's all I got.
I'm going to just jump on Joe's point about Marco Rubio tanking, because I'm still hopeful that someone other than Ted Cruz or Donald Trump will take the nomination.
Oh, I am too.
Third place is not tanking. Yeah, he's not tanking. He's just in third place against Trump and Cruz.
He's just losing.
He's just losing. But everybody's losing to Trump right now.
Yeah, it's not that he's not popular, it's just that he does shitty in the polls.
Well, his audience is very select.
Let me have this.
All right, Jeff, you're brooding. Do you want to like read some poetry or some shit?
I'm just hiding behind a lamp because I was told online that it was a significant improvement to my face. So we're going to keep it like that for now. But I do want to say that this thing that National Review will be doing later on the night, and it'll be coming out pretty much as we're wrapping up tonight here. My fear is the one that has already been mentioned, that it's just like, oh, the establishment going after Trump. Well, isn't that exactly what he wants? But on the other hand, I can tell you right now, I think it's going to be a little bit more weighty than just that. There's going to be a lot of people expressing a lot of opinions, and a lot of opinions from places that aren't just up, hoity-toity conservative intellectuals from New York and D.C. There's going to be a lot of evangelical voices, a lot of Midwestern and Heartland voices. And they aren't necessarily, I think, just going to be pushing Ted Cruz, although I'm sure that that's sort of a natural default given the contours of the race as it stands. They will be, I'm pretty sure, saying something more along the lines of, listen, if you have ever cared at all about conservatism as a value, as an ideology, about the policies that we claim to stand for, then you cannot vote for Donald Trump, and here is why. And they're going to lay it out in some programmatic detail. Now the question is that going to matter? And I'm skeptical. I have to say I am a little concerned that I don't think this is a thesis that I've advanced for quite a while, which is that I think the Tea Party was never really conservative. It was just reactionary, and that's a very different thing. It was a populist reactionary movement that didn't really have the same kind of ideological, content that people like you and me and everybody on this show thinks about when they think about their politics. It was more just like, I don't like change, and I don't like the way things are going now, and I don't like the politicians in Washington, D.C., which is why Trump has been able to steal that energy so effortlessly, and even people like Cruz are having trouble keeping up with someone like Trump in that respect. So I'm not so certain how effective it will be, although I have hopes, because listen, as much as I dislike Ted Cruz, as I was joking the other day when I watched Sarah Palin endorse Donald Trump, I was like, boy, if this was calculated by the Cruz campaign to send me screaming into their arms as a last refuge, it couldn't have worked better, because I'll take Ted Cruz over Donald Trump as much as I hate Ted Cruz.
Now, Mo, you wrote that Sarah Palin speech on Tuesday, correct? Can you tell us, what was your motivating factor in doing that? Where did you draw your inspiration from?
Well, okay, I understand the opportunity for the straight line, but I'm not going to I'm not going to wail on Sarah Palin because she is actually having a bad week, as opposed to the rest of us, in personal details. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to ignore that completely and talk about the establishment for a second, because this is what we do. The establishment has become a term, in my opinion, that is much like rhino, which is a word that has become completely useless by now. Establishment now means a Republican that one particular category of Republican or conservative no longer likes. Everyone in this podcast, everyone talking in this podcast is technically part of the establishment, because we all write for established websites that actually get people to return our calls and send offices and so forth. So we're now establishment.
No, that's untrue. That's untrue. Nobody likes joy.
Okay.
I don't write for anybody either.
You actually, you'd be surprised, Bill, at the kinds of callbacks I can get now. On the other hand, the Free Beacon gets their stories stolen by Politico, so you might have some issues.
That makes you uber establishment. That makes you meta establishment. The problem, basically the problem is where we're getting is a lot of people who are ticked off. And you know why they're ticked off? Because a lot of people lied to them. And now, I personally did not lie to anybody, to the best of my knowledge. But a lot of people have been lying to the Republican and the conservative base for the last 20 years or so. And they understandably are upset about this because, nobody likes to be lied to, especially when you're being lied to by stupid people, which is to say most of the denizens of the Beltway. However, the problem is, and this is the part that it's while being lied to is not very nice, it's no excuse to stop thinking. And it's no excuse to stop working, and it's no excuse to stop making the effort and trying to actually change things. when you consider the situation that we're in right now, I mean, imagine in 2009 that we would be talking right now about how horrible the Republican Party and the conservative movement is going. I mean, we only have like 30 governorships and control of the House and Senate. And if you don't think that makes a difference, imagine a Senate where where Alan Grayson was a senator and had a position in the majority somewhere. Let's imagine how bad it could be. I mean, conservatives and Republicans are in control of the state and local governments in a way that we have not seen in a generation. And that has been because we actually worked at it. Now, do I think that Donald Trump will continue the cause of conservatism? I have no response to that officially at this time because it's a primary and I'm trying to stay out of the primaries. But I will say this. If your urge is to watch the world burn, then I think that perhaps you should be considering a future in some other party besides the Republican. Or for that matter, the Democrat. I'm sure the Greens would love to hear you because they'd love to watch the world burn too, as long as they can do it in a carbon-neutral fashion.
Now one of the... when we're talking about this establishment versus base stuff, looking at Ted Cruz right now, and Orrin Hatch, for God's sakes, talking nice things about Trump while slamming Cruz. The establishment, for lack of a better word, seems kind of petulant right now. No, are they kind of playing into Trump's hands here? And that question is for Brent, of course.
Yes, everyone's petulant right now. The establishment is petulant because Trump is a nightmare to them. The base, or whoever you want to call, are petulant because they're pissed at being lied to for the last, God only knows how long. So they're turning to Trump, who, for God's sakes, isn't even a Republican, let alone a friggin' conservative. Okay? Petulance is the theme of this cycle. Look at what's happening with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is challenging, an out-and-out socialist. And everybody's crazy grandfather is winning, possibly, in New Hampshire. I think Mo's exactly right in that establishment and rhino and things, those terms, don't really have any meaning anymore. We've beaten them into the ground to the point I am not a Marco Rubio supporter, but when you start labeling Rubio as an establishment hack, I think you've lost your way. This is a guy that was the epitome of grassroots when he was elected, here in Florida. He came in as the absolute biggest underdog ever, polling in single digits against Crist, who actually is the epitome of an establishment candidate. And he fundraised, and he did it from the ground, and he built himself up, and he beat him by being the outsider, by being the conservative. Now, I think a lot of people think he's drifted from there since then. But if you're screaming that Marco Rubio is an establishment hack, I think you're out in the weeds at this point.
Joy, step in here. Bring your lampshade.
Oh, if you really want me to. All right, back to the lamp. I guess it's better than
leave the lamp out. I can't take you seriously with that lamp, man.
Yeah,
all right, actually, I do want to make a serious point here, and it's an interesting one that segues in. I think that this whole thing where you saw people like Orrin Hatch semi-backhandedly endorsing Trump over Cruz is a rather sinister sort of triple bank shot strategy on the part of Jeb Bush. And I really think that that's what this is about right now. And I don't know if you guys were reading my Twitter feed a little earlier, about an hour before we came on the air here. But I went on a long, extended rant about this, and I was actually seconded on it by Jay Cost of the Weekly Standard, who said the same thing. Which is that what this is about is their sort of Hail Mary strategy with all the money they've raised and all the money they have to burn and how little they have to show for it in the polls. Their last-ditch strategy is to say, okay, well, what are we going to do? We're going to try to spend all of our super PAC money taking out ads, savaging all the people in the establishment lane, the acceptable lane. And is Marco Rubio an establishment person? No, he isn't. Brent makes a good point. It's not really fair to look at him that way, but he's in that lane. Let's be honest right now. He's gotten that tag, whether it makes sense or not. So they're going after Kasich. They're going after Rubio. They're going after Christie. They're eliminating all those guys. Then this whole whisper campaign where you see the D.C. politicos, the people who have worked with Ted Cruz in D.C., saying, oh, boy, Cruz is just so crazy, I prefer Trump to him. It's designed to make Cruz look, A, insane, and B, to build up Trump even more. Because their idea is like, well, if we could just somehow get this down to a two-man race, us versus them, Jeb versus Trump, well, then we'll have a shot. Which, of course, I think is insanely stupid. I mean, it's a losing strategy, but it's the only thing that they've got left, and they've got more money to burn than God right now. And so that's the way Mike Murphy has decided he's going to go out, in shame and covering himself in ignominy. And that's basically what I think is going on here, and I find it to be an offensive and irresponsible strategy. And this is the point that Jay Kosk made, which I thought was really well taken, and I didn't cover it. So this is insulting to a person like Jeb Bush, who has claimed all along to be, I'm the responsible person in the room. I care about the good of the party. I care about, doing what's right for America and for conservatism. And Mike Murphy, who just made his fucking name going on to MSNBC and tut-tutting, the Sarah Palin, even after he chose Sarah Palin, I might point out, tut-tutting all these irresponsible Tea Party maniacs and, all that stuff. And now he's doing this. He's building up Trump. He's playing with fire because, hey, it's something to do. It's the last move we have. It is so wildly irresponsible and hypocritical on the part of the Bush campaign and on the part of Mike Murphy that I am filled with contempt for them. And I have just an abiding hatred for them. I know Jeb Bush is supposed to be a good man, but listen, fuck him and fuck anybody who works for him at this point.
Well, let me hop in here and speak to this point about Trump getting a lot of boosting from the establishment types. I don't know about how much Jeb Bush is involved in this. It may be that's a strategy, but things I have heard through back channels are that some of this is being overblown. If you read past the headlines, like with Bob Dole, and you actually read what Bob Dole actually said, Bob Dole didn't really come out and just give a full-throated defense of Trump or support for Trump. He seemed to note that Trump was running a successful campaign. And the same thing with Orrin Hatch, who just came out with what was reported as pro-Trump positions. So part of this may be that, yes, these establishment Jeb types are acknowledging that Trump is running a successful campaign, but what it may not be is that they are actually saying, yeah, let's support Trump to either undercut Cruz or to punish the conservative grassroots or get the base in line. And that's the thing I would caution everybody about this. I was just as pissed off as Jeff when I started hearing these whispers. I was ready to just set fire to myself first because that would do the most good. But I read into it more, read past the headlines, and I'm not sure it's as dire as everyone might be thinking.
Joe, weigh in here. Are you confused? Your man Bobby Jindal is out of the race. Do you even know what to do anymore, or are you beside yourself with distraught?
I've taken on an optimistic tone, and that is that with the establishment lining up, I realize just how terrible they are. And they realize that if Donald Trump is the worst thing to happen to the Republican Party, then they need to get behind him, because if anything's going to drive voters away from Donald Trump, it will be the Republican establishment. However, I'm also realistic in knowing that Mitch McConnell and gang really aren't that brilliant. So I'm going to have to settle for the fact that, yes, I am confused, but luckily I have an entire bottle of bourbon right here. So hang on, wait. This moment of drinking is in fact brought to us all by Arby's, because nothing matters.
Horsey sauce, baby.
Take a moment of silence.
Everybody drink. That was good.
Bill, if I could do something other than jumping in right here. One, honest to God on everything that's holy, and I don't mean this jokingly or cruelly, I had no idea Bob Dole was still alive. I did not know that Bob Dole was still alive. I've seen the pictures. It doesn't really look like Bob Dole is still alive.
He's been dead since 1986.
Bob Dole has so much Viagra in him that he's still just upright. He's still erect. The second part, now that I'm done messing with Bob Dole about Bob Dole, I don't think Jeb Bush is that smart. I don't think Jeb is the smart Bush brother. I don't. Nothing.
That was Neal Bush.
Yeah, I thought it was Harry.
The great wasted talent was semi-criminal Neal Bush, and we never knew it because he just couldn't keep his shit together.
But seriously, looking at the way Jeb's campaign has been run so far and what he has accomplished to this date, I don't think he's that smart. I don't think the people that he's got working with him, I think they might be devious enough to try it. I don't think they're smart enough to try it. So, if Jeb Bush is the mastermind behind this, he's just simply blowing a bunch of other people's money, which seems to be the only thing he's good at this election cycle.
Now, Mo, we have, to my mind, one of the best points that I've seen raised on this is from John Demaney. Wooka Wooka Fresh says on Twitter, what we need is a candidate that is unapologetic like Trump, but says things that are sane. That guy has a path to the nomination. Do you think he's in the field right now?
Yes, I do. I mean, basically, look, we have to remember three things about this election. One, no matter how horrible we think things are right now, they're even worse for the Democrats, because at least we don't have to run either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, or God help us, Martin O'Malley. Bless his heart for staying in this race, because every day he's in this race is a day.
Can I have 10 more seconds? Can I have 10 more seconds?
Yes.
Can I have?
Go ahead.
That was me making fun of. That was me making fun of Martin O'Malley.
Yeah, that was a Martin O'Malley joke, man. Come on.
Yeah, God bless Martin O'Malley. Every day he runs is the day he's not in Maryland, and believe me, we don't miss him. So that's one. We're gonna have to remember we're doing better than the other side is right now. Two.
I just want to point out there's nothing more obscure in this world than a Martin O'Malley joke, because nobody cares about Martin O'Malley or watches the Democratic debate. So that was really, really good, Joe.
I tried to make Martin O'Malley. I tried to make a Martin O'Malley meme happen by saying Martin O'Malley holds press conference with supporter, to let him know he's quitting the race, and it failed to catch on. So
that's because suspension
nobody
of
knows who
disbelief
Martin
only.
O'Malley is.
Suspension of disbelief only goes so far. There are no Martin O'Malley supporters.
This is the most coverage Martin O'Malley's gotten in some time.
That's right. We're the only ones still talking about him.
Right. Now, two, because this is a three-part series. Two, we are forgetting that nothing has happened yet. We are still about a week or so away from whatever how long it is until the actual caucuses. At the moment, everything is still up in the air. So we may just come back and a month from now and go, wow, Donald Trump. So that was our Howard Dean this cycle. We don't know. He could win. He could he could disappear. We could be going Donald too. Got Donald too. Now, as to the question itself, in the general election, I honestly believe that we will be having a serious conversation over the differences between us and the Democratic candidate. Now, if it's somebody like Trump, we're going to be having a conversation that's going to be involving, oh my God, how horrible is Hillary Clinton / Bernie Sanders / I don't know, Joe Biden if he decides to come in and save the Democratic Party from itself, which would not be the worst idea that Joe Biden ever had, because God knows the Democratic Party could need some saving. If it's not Donald Trump, then we'll actually have a policy discussion. a consistent policy discussion. But what we're having here right now is what we're doing is just we're pretty much running around in circles, talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. Meanwhile, the actual election is going to be decided by a bunch of people who are going to actually go into the Iowa night in January and spend 6 hours, milling about and talking to each other and coming to some kind of consensus. Now, whether you think that's a good process or not is immaterial. That's the process that we're in. And any discussion that does not take that into account is in a fundamentally a amusing but irrelevant discussion.
Understood. So I had a sweet question lined up for Neal, but I totally forgot it. Neal, do you want to freestyle on something? Is there anything you feel strongly about? Why don't you talk about the Kasich bump? Because I feel like Kasich is getting a lot of his support from people who wear jean jackets and leather jackets.
And leather
jackets. Man. Yeah. CNN says that he has pulled into second. He's up 7 points in New Hampshire. Rubio, meanwhile, is down 4. Is down by about the same amount. And what I found surprising, because I thought he was on the verge of, getting bumped up, is Chris Christie actually fell precipitously too. And support seems to be coalescing around John Kasich. I'm assuming because the people of New Hampshire are terrible, but tell me, what do you think here?
Well, I think with Jeff's earlier caution about the quality of polls in New Hampshire in mind, we can also look at the fact that John Kasich is a massive asshole. And if you're going to take on Donald Trump, maybe you want that kind of guy going up against him. But no, I don't think we're really going to see much of a Kasich bump. I think he may be a little he may overperform relative to what everyone expected, but I honestly I don't see him lasting too much longer. Certainly he won't outlast somebody like Jeb. I should think, but yeah, I mean, hell, at this point in the primary, it's just one more wrinkle. I'm kind of just rolling with it, man. So that's the only freestyle I've got for you. Is I'm open to a Kasich thing. Let's see what happens. I mean, what else? What's the worst that could happen? That he actually wins and Donald Trump doesn't? I mean, I'll take that deal.
Oh, see, I wouldn't. He's the only one I wouldn't vote for. But I do like
the only one you wouldn't vote for?
Yeah, I'd vote for Trump over Kasich. Oh, yeah.
Really?
What the hell? You're fired. You're fired.
Man, and people gave me shit earlier today when I said that I would prefer Trump over Jeb, but man, that's crazy.
Sorry, man. Somebody who converts willingly from Catholicism to Episcopalianism loses my vote because that man's not a serious person.
Wait,
Kasich did that.
Oh, fuck that guy then.
yeah. But I do like the characterization of Kasich as a wrinkle on the ass of history. I think that's fantastic.
That's not quite what I said, but let's go with it.
Kasich is crow's feet on a taint.
That is better than what you said, Neal.
That's much better. You've improved upon it, Phil.
You're welcome, Internet. Now, Jeff, is that what you're going to use in your bank robbery tomorrow? What's going on with the outfit?
I actually have a full ski mask, but yes, this is practice. I need to get the reason I like this is I can see myself here on the video, so I get a sense of whether I could be identifiable in a very shaky, video camera that's up in the corner of a bank lobby when I walk in.
Nice.
No, but more to the point, Neal actually made the point that I would have said earlier, is that I don't really think Kasich is surging in New Hampshire at all. I just think he's a non-entity. He's going to drop out after New Hampshire because he's going to finish somewhere third at best, more likely fourth or fifth, and that'll be the end of him. And that's all there really is to say about John Kasich.
Now, Mo, you alluded to this before when we were talking about Palin, that you didn't want to insult her. And I actually take a charitable view to Palin. I don't like this new narrative that the Democrats and the media were right about Palin all along, comparing Palin in 2015 to Palin in 2008. I think she's a product of getting shat upon by every Republican consultant she's ever met, and is, just shoving a middle finger into their face. So I don't begrudge Sarah Palin at all. I think she's great, except for one thing. Sarah Palin's endorsement of Trump is actually the only thing that made me believe the conspiracy theory that Trump is a Democratic plant in the race to generate controversy anytime Hillary Clinton should be on the front pages. Because the revelations Tuesday that Hillary Clinton most definitely committed a crime in emailing classified documents really seemed to be solidified on Tuesday, and it just so happened that all the political press could talk about was Sarah Palin talking about Trump. Is this do you buy into the conspiracy theory, A? And B, if not, shouldn't Republican voters be a little bit more concerned about running a celebrity-studded candidate who always takes center stage? Well, because it draws away from Hillary Clinton's criminality.
Well, let's take that in order. First off, regarding Sarah Palin, let us, of course, all agree. I think all reasonable people can agree that anything that's happened to Sarah Palin is ultimately John McCain's fault. He was responsible for taking a person who was a perfectly good first-term governor of Alaska, rising star, and he wrecked her career. And we can be very grateful that he didn't do it to Bobby Jindal, who was the other person who was we were hoping that he would be picking at the time. So if you have a problem with the way Sarah Palin is today, blame John McCain, because God knows we all do. Now, as to the conspiracy theory, conspiracy theories are a favorite of mine, at least until they go into really strange places. I would have to say that I do not believe there's a conspiracy theory that that Donald Trump is Hillary Clinton's stalking horse. I think that he is in this race because he thinks he can win it. I think that he thinks that he should win it, and I do not think that he thinks. I even think that he thinks he's a better candidate than Hillary Clinton is, which is true. But then again, this empty beer bottle of mine is a better candidate than Hillary Clinton, so that's not an issue right now. Now, as to conspiracy theories, they never work. Okay? They never, ever, ever work. To give one example, we couldn't even smuggle guns into Mexico, which is something that any competent government should be able to do. We've been doing it for over 150 years. We can't even smuggle guns into Mexico and not get caught under this administration. What makes you think that the Democrats are going to be able to create this 9-dimensional chess? Because if they're going to do a 9-dimensional chess, they're going to come up with a better candidate than Hillary Clinton to be the beneficiary. They would have had a better candidate to be a foil to Hillary Clinton than Bernie Sanders. I mean, these people are not geniuses. They're not even particularly smart. And they're not particularly successful either, as an examination of the last 3 election cycles should include. And I'm including 2012 in that one, because the only one who actually got out of that one smelling like a rose was Barack Obama. And that was, we'll get into the postmortem of the 2012 election now. So, I mean, as to whether we want to have a candidate who is a celebrity as our nominee in the general election, well, I guess we're going to find out one way or the other. Either the voters will decide that they're going to do it, or the voters are going to decide they're not going to do it. I don't have very much control over this process. What I can do is hopefully be able to give people good arguments, or at least entertaining arguments. And a good entertaining argument along these lines is, when you hear people talking about conspiracies, I want folks to remember these immortal lines from the X-Files, when they said, "You mean the federal government, the same people who gave us Amtrak and the Susan B. Anthony dollar? These are the people you expect to be having a secret conspiracy? They can barely tie their own shoes."
Now, Joe, unlike Mo, you do have a ton of control over this process and this primary.
Well, yes.
Tell us what you're going to do with it.
As one of the winners of the massive $1 billion Powerball here recently, I'm actually going to just buy an election or 3 for myself, buy a couple for the Koch brothers as a thanks for all the great work that they've done for America, and then I'm going to buy an island in the Philippines, and I'm just going to go there. Fuck you guys, I'm done with all this bullshit.
Understood. Now, Brent, are you done with all this bullshit? And if not, why not?
No, I'm
really,
done.
we're praying that you're done with this.
I'm done with this bullshit. As someone, I was never a Palinista, but I was a fan of Palin's. I defended her. I stood up for her. I'm done with Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin owns her own actions. John McCain may have set her up, but she went down the white trash highway all on her own. What I'm really sick of is this circular thing we've got going where somebody says something that might possibly be critical of Sarah Palin, and then Bristol's pregnant ass runs to her blog and screams for 3 days about how they're disloyal to her mother. First of all, fuck you. We don't owe you any loyalty. You're a politician, not a king. We owe you nothing. You have to earn the loyalty. But they were disloyal to her, and we hate her. And then if somebody says something against Bristol about the fact that, we don't owe you any loyalty and grow up, child, then here comes Sarah Palin bigfooting in with her mama bear grizzly routine and yelling about, you can't talk about my baby that way. This happens every Friday night in the trailer park. This is not what happens on the national stage of U.S. politics. Stop it already. She's a grown woman. She's apparently making very horrible decisions since she's had 2 kids from 2 different people, both out of wedlock now, while pushing abstinence. Well done. But she's an adult. She can make her own decisions. She can write her own blog. She can stand up for herself. She doesn't need her mommy running in to help her every time. We also don't need Bristol acting as some kind of sound piece for Sarah, which I think is what's happening here. I'm done with both of them. Thank you, Sarah, for trying to rescue the train wreck that was John McCain. You did your best. They screwed you. Please move on now. Go collect your TLC money. Live wild in Alaska. Go shoot something. Do whatever it is you want to do. Please go away.
Now, Joy, you have fathered 18 children from 32 women.
Yeah, I'm like a Led Zeppelin song, basically, yes.
Yeah, do you take offense to Brent's comments?
I wasn't even listening to Brent's comments because I don't really care what Brent thinks. So, I mean, to the extent that I might have been paying attention to him, I wouldn't have really mattered because I have more followers than he does on Twitter.
Oh, fair enough.
No.
Neal, like Joy, you don't wash your hair. Losing control of this show.
The reason Joy has more followers than anybody on Twitter is because he stole the Decision Desk title and put that on his page. You had about 600 followers until you all of a sudden added Decision Desk onto the end of your name, and holy shit, now all of a sudden you have 10,000. I wonder what happened.
Someone's jealous.
Yeah,
No,
Brent, just throw Palin onto the end of your Twitter handle, and you'll have a ton of followers.
Now is not the time.
Brent is just the sort of stupid name that Palin would name their kid.
I believe the attention was about to be put on to me, which is where I like it. So why don't we
so let's go to Neal. Neal has something smarter to say than anyone.
No, I don't. I just want to hear Bill's question. What the hell were you saying, Bill?
Oh, yeah. Neal, you own 3 switchblade combs. How are you doing today?
What am I doing? I was going to comb my hair a little bit, but, that's about it. That's all as far as I got. I've been tapping the Rockies here, just kind of letting things develop organically. But
fair enough.
Having a blast on BATF. I don't know about the viewers. Viewers, how you doing? Liking it? You're liking it.
Viewer. It's a Martin O'Malley joke. There's one guy here, and he thought BATF was shorthand for some weird type of porn. It's like, oh, well, click on it.
Actually, isn't it, in a way?
Probably. This is America, man. There's degenerate stuff going on. But Neal, seriously, coming back to the question of Hillary's emails, I mean, there are people out there, and not just on the right anymore, who are pretty much coming to terms Sorry, I just spilled a beer. And speculating that Hillary could actually be indicted here, which was a punchline a couple months ago. The idea that Hillary would ever be indicted. Do you actually trust the DOJ to do something like that?
At a certain point, if the evidence continues to mount, I mean, they won't really have a choice, but they can push it right up to the very limit. You know, and even if they do decide, oh, we've got to indict her, and it proceeds along, I mean, Obama could probably like preemptively pardon her or something. He's done worse things with his executive powers, so you know he'll just preemptively pardon her after she wins the election against Ted Cruz, and then we'll have free and clear President Hillary Clinton. But or maybe she could take a page from Barack Obama and just pardon herself once she is in the White House. I don't know. But it is actually, on a serious note, it is a possibility that her entire campaign could come to a screeching halt, not because she's a terrible retail politician, which is true, and not because she represents the past in a way that practically none of the Republican candidates do. But because she's an out-and-out criminal who played fast and loose with top-secret and beyond level information. So, yeah, this could really come back to bite her. I'm not holding my breath, but it's a distinct possibility at this point, which is more than you could say a few months ago.
I'm beginning to think she might actually be fucked. I think
you've got some intelligence experience there, Jeff.
Yeah, and I still stand by my long held position that she's not going to be indicted because the Justice Department will not pursue charges against her for a whole host of reasons. Most of them political, some of them maybe even fairly somewhat prudential, which does protect the powerful. But I think that what will happen is that the FBI, at this point, I'm beginning to think the FBI will feel the need to refer charges. The way this works, people who aren't familiar with the legal system don't maybe realize this. The way it works is the FBI does their investigation, and they make a recommendation to the Justice Department saying, we recommend that you charge this person with X, Y, and Z, and then the Justice Department decides whether to follow through with that and actually press charges. And that's the way it works in the criminal system, in the federal criminal system. I don't think the Justice Department will do that, but here's the thing. That recommendation is made privately. If the Justice Department sits on this or spikes it the way I expect them to, that will inevitably leak. That's going to come out because there are a lot, and I know this for a fact because I know this, there are a lot of righteously fucking pissed off people in the intelligence community, and I'm not talking about partisans. The intelligence community is actually very liberal in a lot of ways. A lot of these people are sort of DC Beltway insiders. They're kind of Maryland, Northern Virginia types. They're very, very liberal, but they're angry about this. They're angry about the arrogance. They're angry about the damage to national security. They're angry about a lot of things. They will say, hey, this is actually criminal. Do what you want to do. And if the Justice Department doesn't follow up, that's going to come out in the news, and that's going to hurt her. Now, would it deep six her? I don't know, but it might throw a real monkey wrench into her primary with Bernie Sanders, I can tell you that. All of a sudden, Bernie might suddenly start saying that the email scandal really matters. He didn't before, remember, during the debates, but that suddenly might come back, and he might actually revisit that and say, well, you know what, suddenly now this is a real issue.
Well, the problem with your explanation is that you're relying on the Justice Department to work as it probably should, which, given the way that anything under the Obama administration has been, is not going to be how things actually happen. What's going to happen is that Hillary is going to look at her numbers and realize that everything she's saying, all this defense of Barack Obama and all of this, embracing his legacy, is not getting her the numbers she needs to really pull ahead of Bernie Sanders. So the moment she starts saying that on the campaign trail is the moment the DOJ is going to actually move ahead with the referrals that they more than likely already have. And that is when you're going to see all of this go down, is the moment Hillary Clinton separates herself. Because remember, Joe Biden said they were going to be out there making sure that whoever the winning candidate is pushes ahead with continuing the Obama legacy. And if Hillary looks like she's not going to, the Obama administration is going to be there.
That's a fantastic point in my view. If there's anything, Obama has always shown himself practical when it comes to cleaning out the garbage to protect his own legacy. Do you think there's anything to that, Mo?
All right, talk now. It's funny because in a lot of ways, I look at a lot of this and I think to myself, well, none of this matters. And I mean that in a completely different way than we've been using it so far tonight. To answer your question very quickly, yes, I think that Barack Obama cares about Barack Obama's legacy more than anything else. Actually, that's the only thing he cares about at this point. He's counting the days. He wants to be gone. He wants to be remembered. And there's a part of him that would be more than happy to have a Republican successor, because then he can go, oh, look at how horrible the Republicans have done things since I left office, and never mind that we're cleaning up this mess. But it's funny because we keep talking about, will she get indicted? Will she get convicted? Will it all be buried and stuff? And we're all assuming that having nothing happen is causing nothing to happen. There's a reason why her polling numbers are horrible. There's a reason why Republicans are going, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton in the general election, which is something that we always get crossover people voting in every election. And we get a lot less of it this time around. There's a reason why she's so unpopular, and it's not just because she's a horrible politician, a bad Secretary of State, and just a generally awful human being. Part of the reason why she's having these problems is because she's ducked out on this. She's ducked out on Benghazi. She's ducked out on what happened in Iraq and Syria and in ISIS. She's ducked out on the fact that she's never accomplished anything useful in her career ever. And those problems don't go away. Those questions don't go away. What's happening instead? People are just going, and and they've decided that she's just horrible. And that's why I don't worry too much about whether she's going to get indicted, because she's already been indicted by the American people. And a preponderance of the American people have gone, yeah, she's probably guilty. Whether that will mean anything in terms of the election, I don't know. But in a very real sense, we're already getting what we needed from a purely partisan political hack point of view. We're already getting what we need out of this, and that's people going, Hillary.
Now, because Bill is outside, we know that his connection is utter dog shit when he's out there. I want to jump to Neal now. And Neal, with all of this that's going on, do you believe that Hillary is starting to feel the burn?
Well, she damn well ought to be feeling the burn. I know she anticipated just sort of strolling into and securing the nomination. But she anticipated that in 2008 as well, and it's sort of a rude awakening for her. I think we all know her limitations as a politician and as a human being. She does not have Bill's natural charm and rapport with the human species. She lacks it almost altogether, and that counts. That counts in politics.
I know I'm a narcissist because I thought you were talking about me.
No. No.
There's a reason the camera jumped to you right then, Bill.
You're an all right guy, Bill. But yeah. So Hillary, she damn well ought to be feeling some pressure right now with Bernie Sanders, and I don't think that he's actually going to take the nomination from her. I do think that he may do well in these early states based purely on the same impulse that's driving the Trump phenomenon. It's this anger with the establishment, because the Democrats have an establishment too, and the Democrats have their own populist wing that is frustrated with the pace of change or how many freebies that they're getting. So Bernie Sanders is speaking to those people. He's speaking to these angry people. He's speaking to a lot of these young people who are stupid and don't know any better and don't realize that socialism doesn't really work. So, yeah, Hillary should be worried, and I am kind of curious to see what the Clinton machine drags out to put the bullet in the head of the Bernie Sanders campaign. I think that'll be entertaining for everyone to see. Because remember, these are Clintons.
Now, this is one of the interesting things. We've started to see Planned Parenthood and Emily's List come out and say that Bernie doesn't care about abortion. He's got a 100% NARAL rating. We're starting to see, Hillary's own people saying that Bernie's campaign ad today shows that he doesn't think Black Lives Matter. Aside from the Schadenfreude, which this gives me, what do you guys make of this? Do you think these kind of cultural liberal attacks against Bernie Sanders, basically attacking him for being too materialist, do you think they're going to be effective, Joy? Joy?
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't even listening to anything you said.
Isn't it hilarious that they are attacking Bernie Sanders as not thinking Black Lives Matter?
Well, no, he doesn't. Bernie Sanders is a socialist, which means he comes from that line of Leninism and Stalinism. He doesn't think any lives matter. He thinks that lives only matter in the abstract, but not in the individual sense. So he would think that the idea that black lives mattered more than the lives of the proletariat in general is a horribly bourgeois idea, I imagine. No, but seriously, yes, it's a ridiculous. Not only is it a ridiculous attack, but I could think of no stupider messenger to carry that attack than David Brock. David Brock of Media Matters, who is, I think, quite possibly the whitest man that ever lived. Not only is he white, he's got white hair, he's got white skin, and he's addicted to a white drug. And so why are you getting that man to go after Bernie Sanders for his insufficient care and attention to the African-American Democratic voting population? I don't know. I thought it was hilarious when John Podesta, of all people, who is actually affiliated with the Bernie Sanders, or rather with the Hillary Clinton campaign, publicly said on Twitter, "Yo, chillax, David Brock." I have no idea whether that was just sort of kayfabe, done for the purposes of public PR relations. But I thought it was pretty funny that even like Hillary's own team was saying, like the equivalent of the Big Lebowski, shut the fuck up, Donnie. Just shut up. You're not helping here.
But I mean, Brent, moving on to you, and I know we got to draw to a close soon. Do you think that these kind of liberal civil war, we've seen liberals engage in this cultural civil war using the tactics that they normally reserve for conservatives? They use it for other thinkers, for mansplaining and all that stuff on Twitter, but is it surprising to see them use it against a presidential candidate who is favored to win New Hampshire? Are you surprised that the Hillary machine is going this all out and basically accusing Bernie Sanders of being a participant in the war on women? And does that hurt their general election prospects?
I think it's surprising in that we're not steeped in liberal politics the way we are in conservative and right-wing and Republican politics. We forget, and it was mentioned earlier, the Democrats are going through the exact same thing in their primaries that we're going through in ours. They're tearing each other apart between Clinton and Sanders, and this idea that, even more so than the Republicans, that they don't have a good candidate to run. And all they're doing is just bouncing back and forth all off of each other. We know the Clinton machine is the dirtiest, nastiest, most hardcore machine out there, and will stoop to any level. You've got we're looking out for bimbos, we're looking out for, they will do anything to win, and not only will they do anything to win, she's desperate to win. This is Hillary Clinton's last chance to do anything, and she feels she was robbed in 2008. She took I'm sure what she feels is the menial task of Secretary of State just so she could get her foot back in the door. She is desperate to get out there and to not only win this nomination, but to win the presidency. And so I'm not too surprised to see them kind of eating each other. If I could bounce back just for a second to what Mo was saying about the indictment and whether or not it matters, I think he's absolutely right from a political perspective. I'm not sure it much matters whether or not she's indicted. I think it absolutely matters from the standpoint of we are either a nation of men or we are a nation of laws. The whole point of the United States was that we were all equal. There was no royalty, there was no gentry, there was no clergy, there was no landed, there was none of this. We are all equal under the law. If Hillary Clinton can openly flout the law to the extent that she has, that where she's literally giving away, not giving away, she's flinging about government secrets above top secret, and nothing happens to her, then the law does not matter. And if the law doesn't matter, fuck it. So I think even if she's never convicted, I think the very act of going through the motion of following the law, and if anybody else had done what she did, they would be indicted. I think the very idea of following the law and going through those motions is important.
To clarify real fast, Brent is correct. I was addressing that from a political point of view, not from an ethical point of view. From an ethical point of view, Hillary Clinton is guilty as sin. I tend to, this comes back to, I tend to identify as a self-processed Republican partisan party hack because Lord knows somebody needs to do it these days. And I don't want to make it sound like I disagree. We've read on this one. She absolutely should go. We have put people in jail for less. We put Martha Stewart in jail for less, and all she did was maybe lie to the feds in the process of not being actually guilty of the original crime she put in. Hillary Clinton deserves to go to jail for this. I don't know whether she will or not, and I'm trying to be the last fairy godmother at the feast here, and try to mitigate the damage by talking about how even if we can't actually get justice, we can get a little bit of political payback. But I completely and totally agree. It is absolutely we must address principle. But in in this particular case, I'm just trying to find the silver lining.
Understood. Benjamin P. Glaser on Twitter, everyone should follow him, brings up the point that Bernie looks a lot like McGovern did when he ran and got crushed. That's a possibility. My own theory, and mostly because I like horror movies, so I like being terrified, is what happens if Bernie is Barry Goldwater? What if he's the guy who goes out and loses, but becomes the intellectual foundation for his party for a generation? Where do you guys sign here? Is he McGovern or is he Barry Goldwater? And just through the panel, we'll go left to right. Brent, Joy, Mo, Neal, Joe.
I pray to God he's the intellectual father for the party for the next generation. Are you kidding me? Bernie Sanders, an open socialist, an open... please, God, yes, let the rest of the party follow him, because I think those are much easier elections to win than people like Barack Obama, who declared himself a blank slate that people can project upon. Please, God, let him be the godfather moving forward.
Joy, it's your turn. Go.
I'm actually very scared that he's not their Barry Goldwater at all. That in the current very bizarre, freaked out transitional climate that we're in, he could win. He could win not just against Donald Trump. He could win against Ted Cruz. He could win. Who the heck knows, man? I mean, against a Marco Rubio, I would say he's an easy put away. But in any other circumstance, my God, it could happen. It really could. Don't underestimate it.
So you think he's Reagan?
Not Reagan, but Carter. Carter barely squeaked in against Ford, okay? And that's not even a perfect analogy because this would be a third Democratic administration in a row. But I'm saying he's not a Reagan, but he could win. The climate, the mood of this country is unlike anything that I have ever seen before in my living memory. And I'm older than anybody except Mo, who looks like my grandpa who whittles. So, I'm just saying, do not underestimate the potential he has to win in a weird environment like this. Socialism is no longer the frightening scare word that it once was, is all I'm saying. And that's a shame.
Mo?
I would be disappointed if Bernie Sanders became the gold water of the Democratic Party because it would mean the destruction of the Democratic Party. And my parents were Democrats. Their parents were Democrats. Like, you know, I grew up in a Truman Democrat household, blue collar, believed in America. We hated the commies just like everybody else who was decent and honorable and true and good. It would bother me to see that the party of Harry Truman and Grover Cleveland got utterly destroyed and corrupted by being, like, you know, by becoming the standard bearer for, like, you know, one of the most vicious, cruel, vindictive, homophobic, racist, sexist, and bigoted and genocidal, like, you know, economic philosophies of the 20th century. I mean, I understand that, like, you know, socialism isn't the bad word it used to be, but, you know, it should be, because commies are filthy, disgusting animals. And I would hate to think that the Democratic Party had, like, you know, descended to that level.
Man, bigoted, racist, and homophobic. You almost convinced me to vote for Sanders. Good job. Thanks, Mo. Neal, Goldwater or McGovern? Go.
You know, I like what Mo said there, but and I agree. I would hate to see what the Democratic Party was turn into what it is becoming. But I do think that people forget socialism, communism, the dangers inherent to those philosophies. And I think that's where they're headed. And I think Bernie Sanders has broken through. I think that the breach has already been, I don't even know what the word for that is, breached. The wall is down. Bernie Sanders is through. He's over the wall. And it's all a matter of just building on the existing level of support from naive, foolish young people who should be disenfranchised. My God, Bill, how many beers do you have?
Don't worry about it. Joe.
I'm not worried. I'm impressed.
Well, my last one's in the fridge, and we're closing out, so I don't want to interrupt it. Joe, McGovern or Goldwater?
I fear it's McGovern. I kind of hope it's the Goldwater, and nothing matters because Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders for president is exactly what this country deserves.
Fair enough. All right, lightning round, everybody. Over under for the Freedom Kids who sang the Donald Trump anthem. How many Grammys does it get? I'm going 2. Brent, go.
Over.
Joy.
It gets all the Grammys, all of them.
Mo.
I didn't listen to the whole thing, so I would not be capable of giving you an opinion.
Fair enough. Fair enough. John Travolta, go.
1 this year, but then 2 the following year, and then 3 the year after that, because such control of the government, he's going to just decree that they get a Grammy.
Ooh, and then it's the national anthem after that.
Then it's the national anthem. We'll hear it at every baseball game. The Mets will be holding their hats over their hearts to this. Over here, over there. Yeah, that's happening, guys. That's replacing that shitty anthem.
That's just the Mets, though. I mean, to be a Mets fan is to be initiated into the ways of pain. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
This would be an improvement for the Mets. Come on.
yeah. Fuck you both. Yeah, Florida Marlins and Baltimore Orioles. Gosh, enjoy Chris Davis for 7 years, $160 million. Joe, over under 3 Grammys, and then we're going to sign out.
6 Grammys and 2 Pulitzers.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
All right, we are not going to top that joke. I'm Bill McMorris from the Washington Free Beacon. It has been an absolute pleasure for holding you guys 20 minutes over schedule. I'd like to thank everybody who joined me, especially Brent Cochran, who has a podcast whose name I've forgotten. Brent, what's the name of the podcast?
Thank you, Leon. It is the Drift compatible podcast. It's on Stitcher and iTunes.
All right. And you guys heard it. Thank you so much, Brent from the Draft Contemptible podcast, Joy Behar from the Ace of Spades Decision Desk, Mo Lane from RedState, Neal Doing from the set of Grease 3, The Lightning Continues, and Joe Cunningham from RedState. Thank you all so much. It has been an absolute pleasure wasting your time. And this has been the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. God bless you all. Now's the part where we turn off the show.
And knowing is half the battle.
Still live, fellas. Still live.
we can't shake it.